Welcome to episode 8 of An Alcoholic Explains. This is Waihiga M. So today we're going to be talking about alcohol in different cultures and definitely a global perspective. Before I get into this episode, kindly like, share, and subscribe to my channel. This is the Mental Wellness channel, and through this series, An Alcoholic Explains, we are delving deeper into topics of alcoholism and trying to understand this disease of alcoholism, this monster, this demonic force. And we're trying to get help to people who have been affected by this disease. Alcoholism in different cultures and a global perspective. Alcoholism is definitely a global issue that transcends cultural, geographical, and socio-economic boundaries. It is characterized by the compulsive need to consume alcohol, despite its negative effects on an individual's health, relationships, and social standing. Although the physiological impacts of alcohol addiction are largely universal, its cultural context and perceptions vary significantly. In some societies, alcohol is deeply ingrained in social customs, while in others, it is stigmatized. And as a female alcoholic from East Africa, Kenya specifically, I have personally encountered the intersection of society norms, gender expectations, and addiction. So today I want to explore alcoholism in different cultures. I want to highlight the factors that shape attitudes towards actions, highlighting the factors that shape attitudes towards alcohol, its role in social life, and the varying support systems available for alcoholics around the world. So alcoholism in Western cultures, in many Western cultures, particularly in Europe and North America, alcohol definitely plays a significant role in social interactions. In countries like France and Spain and Italy, wine is often consumed with meals, and its production is a key part of their economies and cultural identity. However, in these regions, alcohol consumption is often normalized to the point where excessive drinking may go unnoticed or even celebrated in certain contexts, such as college parties or corporate functions. The culture of binge drinking, especially among young adults, has contributed to high rates of alcoholism in countries like the United States and the United Kingdom. While there are comprehensive rehabilitation and support systems in these regions, such as Alcoholics Anonymous AA and government-funded rehab programs, the social acceptance of drinking also makes it difficult for some to acknowledge the issue early. I think most of us, well, I'll speak for myself, my first encounter of alcoholism and what that meant probably was in Hollywood movies and addiction and all of that, which are obviously Western movies. And also we are introduced to music videos that rap culture, hip-hop culture, pop culture that has a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, a lot of this attitude of living young, die young is so celebrated. So you kind of grow up, well, I grew up believing that, you drink. There's no choice about whether you drink or not. You drink and you have fun and you take it to the wall and back and you party like it's 1999. And then, and then you just continue drinking. You know what I mean? To me, alcohol never seemed like a choice. Like you can choose not to drink. You can be an adult that chooses not to drink. And definitely alcoholism or the lifestyle to drink is very emphasized in the Western culture, which we here in Kenya heavily consume. So I'm talking about music videos, I'm talking about movies, I'm talking about, just the different ways in which we exchange culture. Currently where I live in Nairobi, place used to be a suburb, and it still kind of is a suburb, but it's getting more and more commercial. And what is happening is that a lot of clubs are moving these sides. So this whole road called Kiambu Road, which is a very major road here in Nairobi, is just full of bars and entertainment joints and pubs and sports bars and clubs that go on and on, Sunday to Sunday, music blaring and full of patrons and customers who are drinking all night long until early hours of the morning. You can hear the clubs going until 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, from around 10 p.m. I used to be one of those revelers who was causing chaos, at these clubs. But around 10 years ago, so let's say in 2014, there were not many clubs in the residential areas at all. The main place for partying in Nairobi or to go to clubs in Nairobi was Westlands. Everybody knew that, like all the clubs are in Westlands or in town, Nairobi CBD. However, now the landscape has changed because the demand for drinking joints, the demand for liquor stores, the demand for, a lot of people would have said, these Western ideas, these Western philosophies, this Western concept. We have a number one, Kenya's first liquor store. It's called Liquor House. That is basically a warehouse that sells alcohol at a discounted price, and it's always full of people. It is always full of people. So there is a huge demand for alcohol. There's a huge demand for the party lifestyle. There's a huge demand for booze. And no longer do I believe that it is a Western concept, be in a car parking lot pimping, which is, getting a car, parking it somewhere, cranking up the music, and then just sipping bottles in there. We have really, really adopted this idea of drinking and drinking and drinking, which brings me to alcoholism in African cultures. So many African cultures have complex, often ambivalent attitudes towards alcohol. In East Africa, so where I'm from, this would be Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. Traditional alcohol beverages like changa or pombe have been consumed for centuries. So these drinks, or even morotina, I think it would be like the Zulus call it unkomboti, right? The fermented drink. So these drinks are deeply embedded in communal gatherings and celebrations and rites of passage. However, the stigma surrounding alcoholism, especially for women, is particularly pronounced. As an East African woman struggling with alcoholism, I have definitely experienced the heavy societal expectations that women must remain virtuous, modest, and in control. Alcoholism among women is seen as not only as a personal failure, but as a societal one, as women are viewed as the moral backbone of families. So this cultural stigma often prevents women from seeking help, and many suffer in silence or are ostracized in their addiction. So the rise of urbanization in African cities has also led to an increased alcohol consumption, particularly among the youth. Western influences, increased disposable income, and greater access to alcohol have contributed to this trend. However, the availability of structured support systems such as rehabilitation centers remain limited. Many alcoholics in East Africa turn to informal networks such as religious organizations for institutions. So basically what I was talking about earlier, how due to urbanization in African cities such as Nairobi, and I'm sure big African cities around Africa, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, if we're in East Africa, Kampala, places like these. We are getting more and more of these bars, these sports bars, coming into the suburb areas, moving away from town CBD, moving away from business districts, and coming into where people actually live, residential areas, because it's that popular. Obviously, we have an increased disposable income. In Kenya, the youth is 70% of the population. The youth, that means people who are between the ages of 18 to, I think, 35 or 40. So that's a really young group of people. And these people are just getting into their first jobs, getting into college, leaving college, starting up their families, and have energy to blow. And unfortunately, this energy is pushed into nightlife. So we have a very, very active nightlife here in Nairobi. And a lot of people fall prey to alcoholism because obviously they were susceptible to it. They didn't know that they had the disease, and then they got into the lifestyle of drinking, and then now it becomes a problem. So unlike the West, so we're partying like the West, we're drinking like the West, the Western world. But unlike the Western world, we don't have the structures such as rehabilitation centers to help us get sober when we actually get into problems. So you'll find a lot of suicides due to mental illness, due to alcoholism, due to drug abuse, because people just can't get access, and they can't just find the right help. This disease of alcoholism and addiction is so stigmatized in Africa, in East Africa, in Kenya, where I'm at, that to reach out for help, especially as a woman, you're just seen as a complete and utter failure. You failed as a woman, you failed as a girl, you failed at every single thing in life. And no, you don't deserve any help, actually, is how you're looked at. You're just a spoiled person. And as we have explored in these episodes, alcoholism is a disease. I will sing it over like a song. Alcoholism is a disease of the mind, the body, and the soul. Alcoholism is a disease of the mind, the body, and the spirit. Alcoholism, I also believe, is a demonic entity that takes over. Why are we blaming people for a disease that they can't cure? Why are we blaming people for a sickness that they did not cause? Why are we blaming people for a demon that has possessed them? We should be helping them. We should be looking at them and treating them with sympathy. We should be looking for ways as to how to treat such people, because they are sick. Alcoholics are very sick people, and we need help. And if we are given adequate help, we do recover. We do recover, and we are able to live amazing lives, one day at a time, under the submission of God. And then we are able to go on to help other alcoholics. But the thing is, we have to get help ourselves first, right? So my issue with the increasing availability of sports bars and alcohol access in Africa. And so we have all these bars, we have all these sports bars, we have all these party joints, not only in residential areas, but just all over the place. They are unregulated, they are unmanaged, and, they cater to such a young group of people, being the youth. And they go on and on and on, week to week, every single day, back to back. It's like they're just horning. These bars are just taking advantage of the fact that these young people don't know any better. They don't know any better. To be going to bars and to be going out and to be living that lifestyle in 2024 is a very dangerous thing to be doing. To be going out, to be drinking to the point of complete inebriation or blackouts, to be driving drunk, to be having sex, and it's obviously unprotected sex, with whoever you find in these clubs, to be going home with whoever you meet there. It's such a bad decision to make in this day and age. We no longer live in the times where you can experiment and get away with it. Maybe you could have done that in the 70s, and you don't get a venereal disease, you don't get an STD, you don't get HIV. You could have done that in the 80s, you don't get into a car accident, you can drive home drunk, and you don't get into a car accident. Maybe you could have done that in the 90s, where you go home with some girl or some guy and they don't turn out to kill you, or be a serial killer or something. But in this day and age, it's way too risky. And then you add alcohol to the mix, you're just not being a very wise person. In Asian cultures, alcohol consumption and alcoholism present another complex picture. In countries like Japan, South Korea, and China, drinking is often tied to business and socializing. So in South Korea, for instance, the culture of hoisik, after work drinking with colleagues, is so deeply ingrained that refusing to drink may negatively impact one's professional relationships. So the intense pressure can lead to alcoholism being overlooked or even encouraged within work environments. However, Asian cultures often view addiction as a source of shame, especially within family structures. In many parts of Asia, addiction is seen as a moral failure, which can isolate alcoholics from seeking help. Traditional medicine and spiritual practices are often sometimes used as alternative treatments to Western-style rehabilitation, but the social stigma around alcoholism can prevent individuals from seeking any form of assistance. So this hoisik after work drinking with colleagues thing of South Korea is very interesting, because I think we have the same thing we experience in Kenya. Not in terms of we do this thing in terms of like, we're just doing business, let's go to the bar after doing business. But we have this thing about, let's kill hours of not having to sit in traffic, let's go to the bar instead. There are a lot of other places people can go, to beat out the traffic. You can go to the gym, you can go watch a movie, you can, stay in the office an extra 2 hours and wait for the traffic. But people really love to go and wait for the traffic to dwindle down while they go and sit and drink beers in a bar, and then they drive home. So it reminds me, I don't know why, but it reminds me of this Korean culture of hoisik. It's a lot of peer pressure, and it's just very stupid in the sense that if you think about it, Why am I here spending my money, sitting down, spending my money, having these drinks with colleagues? It's because of peer pressure. It's the same thing we experienced in high school. It's the same thing we experienced in middle school. And if I don't do it, they're going to look at me like I'm the weird one, or they're going to think that I'm turning them down. But that's the reality in this world. Not everybody can drink. Not everybody can drink. So I find it interesting. We have to have very strong boundaries when it comes to alcohol, and these kind of traditions these traditions that we enforce around drinking, and these habits that we form around drinking, because this is honestly how it starts. It starts with, this person could have come from a home where they didn't drink at all, and then they entered the working world, and where they work, after work, they have to go and get drinks together. And this could be the first time in this person's life, in their adult life, that they're actually drinking alcohol. From then on, they have the genes, the genetic factors there. They have the trauma, and everything is just right for this person to develop alcoholism. And then they're doing this on a daily basis. This is just not smart. So now you're programming your body to expect to drink after work at a certain time. After work at a certain time, we'll be drinking with colleagues. Yeah, this is it's just definitely, it's not good for a person who doesn't have alcoholism, but it's certainly really not good for a person with alcoholism, because it will deeply lay the foundation of the disease. Alcoholism in the Middle Eastern cultures, where Islamic law prohibits alcohol consumption, the cultural approach to alcoholism is marked differently. Alcohol is banned or strictly regulated in several countries, including Saudi Arabia, Iran, leading to much lower rates of public drinking. But however, in some regions, alcohol is still consumed in secret, and alcohol addiction exists, albeit hidden from public view. The religious prohibition of alcohol often leads to deep societal stigmatization of alcoholics. Those who suffer with addiction face severe consequences, including legal punishment or social ostracism. Consequently, many alcoholics in these regions may turn to underground or black market sources for alcohol, leading to additional health risks due to consumption of unsafe substances. In more liberal Middle Eastern countries like Lebanon or the UAE, alcohol is more available, and there is growing recognition of alcoholism as a public health issue, but the resources for treatment remain limited. So that, I feel, is pretty self-explanatory. However, what I'm seeing so much of is just the shame that is put on this disease of alcoholism is just too much. And this is what keeps a lot of us in bondage. It keeps a lot of us stuck in this perpetual cycle of not being able to get help. Most of us stay in that place until we die. So to conclude, alcoholism manifests in different ways across cultures, shaped by society norms, economic factors, and religious beliefs. In Western countries, the normalization of drinking creates a paradox where alcoholism is both widespread and under-recognized, while in many African and Asian cultures, alcohol is intertwined with social traditions, but addiction is heavily stigmatized, particularly for women. In the Middle East, the legal and religious restrictions on alcohol create unique challenges for alcoholics who must navigate the underground alcohol trade and severe societal disapproval. So being a female alcoholic from Kenya, I have personally experienced the compounded challenges of addictions, compounded by the stigma associated with my gender and cultural expectations. It is crucial to recognize that while the physical effects of alcoholism are the same worldwide, the cultural context deeply affects how individuals experience, cope with, and seek treatment for their addiction. So global solutions to alcoholism must account for these cultural differences, promoting understanding and access to treatment that is sensitive to the unique challenges faced by alcoholics in each region. And I just find it so interesting, particularly for the African and Asian cultures, that alcohol is entwined with our social traditions. And we obviously have had alcohol in our history for so very long. But when it comes to addiction, addiction is heavily stigmatized. So, I mean, like, what do you expect if you're going to have a highly addictive substance in our history, embedded in our history? It's only, isn't it only natural to think that select number of people are going to be susceptible, are going to be addicted to this thing, or are going to be allergic to this thing? I mean, it's like introducing some sort of meat or something to people and saying, yeah, well, we've always had this in our history, and we completely care about this, and it has been very important to us in our societal and traditions and all sorts of things, in our social traditions and all sorts of things. So this meat has to be given to everyone, and everybody must partake of this meat. But if you get sick of this meat, or if you're allergic to this meat, there's something very wrong with you, and we believe that there's something wrong with you, like you're from the devil or something, I kind of feel that's what is the practice here in Africa is. We're all expected to react the same way to alcohol because it's all been in our history. It's part of our traditions. And if you don't partake in drinking, then there's something very, very wrong with you that needs to be figured out. People just can't leave it alone and say, okay, this person is allergic to alcohol, and that's just that. Also, the Asian culture, how embarrassing it is, how much shame is attached to it. Japan has one of the highest suicide rates. I mean, there's, people kill themselves, children kill themselves if they have dishonored or been dishonorable to their family or brought in shame to their family, which I think is just so sad. There's a certain park in Japan that is known for suicides. Like, people go in there and hang themselves, kill themselves regularly. The perfectionism that happens in the Asian community is something to behold. I mean, my church, we have a lot of Asian community, and I've just realized by spending time with people from Korea and Japan, the perfectionism is very real. Being the best that you can be and putting yourself to the highest of standards. I mean, I can understand where something like addiction or alcoholism would be seen as it's completely unacceptable. What do you mean you are powerless? When all they seem to be taught in those cultures is perfection, perfection, perfection. So, especially for a woman, I can just imagine. Yeah, that would be hard. Anyways, I'd like to know your experiences. Let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know where you're from, what alcohol means in your culture, how alcohol is treated in your culture. Is it an important part of your culture? Is it an important part of where you came from? And let me know in the comments down below. I'd be really interested to know. Thank you so much. Until the next episode, goodbye, guys.